Lawson, how are you, buddy?
Hey, bro, I'm doing good. I spent the morning with my coffee and I listened to last week's episode, and you surprised me. You did the
Ah,
whole thing about me, and dude, it was
yes.
awkward and weird.
Well,
And don't you
it's
ever do that again.
it's basically for your family. It's for your daughters and for Audrey. So just make sure they listen to it. Even though I know secretly what's about to happen is you're going to listen to it again and again. Don't lie to me, okay? Here's that like on
Ever.
repeat. He's gonna have it like queued up. Play this every Siri. Play this every
Oh
Tuesday.
man, it meant a lot to me, Ken. Thank you, bro.
Oh,
I
hey,
love you, and
bro.
it was great. But I mean,
Same,
come on.
same. I use a word to describe you. Well, wait a minute. No, the one I can say on air. I use
Yeah.
another word to describe you. That I say Lawson Brown is. I'll use words like unique or singular. And what I mean by that is,
Right.
and it actually ties very closely to
Yeah.
today's topic. You're a unique guy. You're a unique guy. You seem to live out of an overflow where your generosity is evident. And so I'm not around men often. And this is particular about men. I'm not around men often who can actually drive or guide a thoughtful conversation that involves other people. Let me say that again. Because that's today's topic.
Yeah.
I'm not around men often who can drive and guide a thoughtful conversation that involves other people. I am, sadly, around men often who are great at monologues. They're great at like executive fiats. They're great at stating their own opinion. But, and I fall into that same trap. Like, this is not like, this is Kent, the pot calling the kettle black. It's like a common challenge among men. I do think I have been aware of it for a while, and because the influence of other people, namely my wife, who will pull me aside after, we're out at a barbecue or a family outing and be like, "Wow, you might have set a record tonight." I was like, "What's that?" And she's like, "The number of facts you shared about yourself." And your previous record was pretty high, and so somehow you managed to break it. So I have been guilty of this often. But what I want to encourage dads with on today's show is not just how to ask better questions. Like, that's smart. We're going to talk about some of that. If you feel like you don't know how to ask good questions, today's show is for you. But your real problem in this area may not be that you just don't know which questions to ask. Well, you can't speak English. That's your actual problem. You don't know which questions to ask. The real problem may be, if we're completely honest, the root cause is you only care about yourself. And you actually struggle, like all of us, sin condition, flesh, pride, ego, got it? You struggle to care about other people. And the way that comes out is in your relationships, namely your marriage, your kids, your work relationships. And you might wonder why some of them are shallow or not as fruitful as they could be. I think today's show is going to go a long way to helping you uncover some of that and solve for it. Before we dive in, I want to remind you of two things. Dear listener, brother, we need your help. Go to rangeleather.com and buy something made out of leather and use the code MJ15 to get 15% off your order. It could be a belt bag, a crossbody, a wallet, a hat, a purse, a keychain, a set of earrings for your wife. Go to rangeleather.com and get some of their amazing products, because they are a very faithful sponsor of this show, and we want to keep them around, and we want to bless them with new business and new leads. Go now, rangeleather.com. Secondly, right after you get done buying something at rangeleather.com, go to manhoodjourney.org/guard, Guard, guard, and become part of the Fatherhood Guard. These are guys, women too, who donate to Manhood Journey every single month. There's more than 70 of them these days, and the donation range is $5 a month to $1,000 a month. Like, we have a wide range of givers involved in our ministry, and this show does not get created for free. There's time and energy and cost to produce things like this show, and Bible studies and ebooks and digital courses and the Godly Father Assessment. All those things take money. And we want to reach millions and millions of dads around the world. In fact, 2 of our Fatherhood Guard members are from Australia. Let's go. dive into the Fatherhood Guard right now. Go to manhoodjourney.org/guard. And guess what? Going back to the first thing I just said, you're going to get a slick range leather hat with a cool Fatherhood Guard logo on it. We can't wait to send you that hat when you become part of our monthly donor community. Lawson. Now, one of the things I've said, and I said this at length in last week's episode about you. Yes, we did the Carly Simons thing. You know, you're so vain. You probably think this episode is about you, but in this case, that episode was about you. You're one of those unique guys. And there's another guy I'd put in your same category, a friend of mine named Blake. And Blake, you know who you are. You were over at my house a few weeks ago, and our families had a cookout. It was a blast. When Blake leaves, when he left our house, I told my wife, April, I go, you know what? I don't know if I know anybody better than Blake at asking thoughtful, meaningful questions of me, and then chasing that with actually listening to my answer and then asking another thoughtful, meaningful question based on the answer that he just heard. Frankly, if we were doing a weekend seminar on how to ask great questions, I would just invite Blake to be the keynote speaker. And the best part is he probably wouldn't even know what to say because he would just ask 1,000 questions about how the weekend was going to go, right? Like he's so good at asking questions. And I find this is an area where most men, most husbands, most dads are frankly terrible at this. Why do you think that is? Or is your experience like mine? Or do you see it some other way?
Oh, well, I'm not near as critical or judgmental as you. Yeah.
That's also probably true. Why do you say that, Lawson? There's a question.
Right. Right. Yeah, man, I love being around people like that. I wish I could meet Blake one day. Because what you get from an interaction with a guy like Blake is you feel heard, you feel like he cared, he was genuinely listening, is like actually engaged and interested. This guy to my left on screen here, Bo Ross, is my brother-in-law. We've been doing life together for decades. Our daughters were born at an early age, and now they are here visiting Bo and his wife Angela, who is Audrey's sister. Audrey's one of 5 girls, and her sister Angela is here. So I'm taking the week off and hanging at home, and they're just coming down to visit and hang out. And inevitably, we've been together for two days now since they got here. I bet the ratio of questions between us two is like 3-1 Bo to Lawson, because he is that guy. Like he is so interested. And what happens in a situation like that, I feel like is, if someone asks a question and then checks out, they didn't really care. But when they ask a question and then sit and listen and absorb your answer, and then go from there with another question, because maybe they just keep on probing. I mean, dude, it's just like so much more engaging, and it makes you want to trust them. It makes you want to reveal things and reflect openly. And, as dads, if, I've done it. I've done it before where talking to one of the girls, in the middle of a conversation, something comes up and I grab my phone, or something comes up on the television, and oh man, it just hurts them when I look back and they're staring like you and I were talking and then you just checked out. Dude, I think that does a little bit of damage on, at least for sure, the conversation, perhaps the relationship, if it becomes or if it is your tendency, or it's a habit that you've got where you just kind of aren't there. It's all about being present. So I forgot the question you asked because I wasn't really listening.
Wow. Typical. Golly, this is so typical. What I find fascinating, you said something embedded in your comments just now that I hadn't thought of, because I listed, in prepping for today's episode, I had listed 5 things that I think smart questions, again, thoughtful, meaningful questions you actually listen to the answer for. And then I added a 6th thing because you just said something about becoming trusted or trustworthy. Not too long ago, I bumped into a guy, and our whole time together was about 10 minutes, plus or minus. And we knew each other a little, but not super well. And we're kind of getting caught up. And I was asking a few questions, kind of like what kind of work do you do and so forth, and tell me about your family, that kind of thing. And he happened to be somewhere with a member of his family who's older, an older kid, a young adult kid. And for about 6 or 7 minutes, he was describing his life and his work and, his involvement in various things. And I was listening and so forth. And then he asked me a question, like a basic sort of remind me again what you do kind of thing. And I wish I could say he is alone in this, but I've had this happen hundreds of times. The minute I began to answer to him, no joke, like if you could just see it on a video, it would have made you'd have laughed if you could see it on video. His head turned away from me. He stopped looking at me, started looking at his adult kid, and had a side conversation about like their lunch plans or something like that. Not like it's not like a 4-year-old that you're trying to keep out of the street.
Like, whoa, stop! Don't run out the road.
Little Sarah's going to fall into the fire. No, that I understand. Interrupt our conversation. But this was like an adult kid that he needed to check and about something that was not entirely time sensitive or material. And it just reminded me. I remember, Lawson, one time taking a guy on an interview lunch. I was the rep for the company, and this guy was trying to get us to hire him. At the lunch, he took a call on his cell phone, which I thought, okay, maybe his wife's going into surgery. Like, you give people the benefit of the doubt. But you could tell after about 20 seconds, this was like a very casual phone call that he's having across the table from me at an Italian restaurant. And I thought, well, that's weird. And then I thought, well, okay, this is a mark against him. Probably not going to recommend we hire this guy. Shockingly, I couldn't believe this happened. As the conversation started to wind down at the 30 or 40 second mark, he asked them a question about their weekend. I'm not joking. He goes, so how was your weekend? He's like looking across his phone at me with his finger up like, sorry, this is going to be a minute. And I thought, it's going to be a minute because you just extended the conversation, dude. Needless to say, we didn't hire that guy, and everybody's going to think I'm joking. Same lunch, he took another call about 45 minutes later. Hilarious. And he wanted a job in sales, which I just couldn't believe.
Right.
But what was fascinating about it, right, is some people would say, well, Kent, we live in the age of social media. People are good at one-way communication. They just post their comment and hit go and send. And social media is driving all this. Man, that was 15 years ago. This is almost pre-Facebook that this lunch occurred. I don't think it's social media is the cause of the problem. It might accelerate the problem, may make it a little worse. But the real problem is that we care about what we care about, and we don't care about what others care about. That's the heart of the matter. And what I want to tie this back to is how to be a more effective, engaged, and loving and disciple-making dad. And I think a lot of guys suffer from this malady, and I think we can help them find their way out.
Do you? I wonder, because is it a skill? Is it something that you can work on? Is it a discipline? Or is it a heart matter? Where do you fall on that? Meaning, when I say a heart matter, I'm talking about how do you so let's say someone's listening to that and they're like, woo, that nailed me. Like
they're playing that lunch they had last week at the Italian restaurant where they took the phone call.
Right. So what does a person do? If you're the dad that is like, yeah, man, I talk over my kids. I don't ask them much. I'm always kind of the dominant person in a conversation. How do you recognize that? And what is it? What is it that's driving that? Maybe that's the more important question to ask yourself is why? How come I always seem to dominate the conversation? It's generally about the topics that I care about.
Yeah.
When I ask questions and I'm trying to listen, it's like a struggle for me to listen, and not go off on a different topic or we'll get to it down the road, but Proverbs 18 13 says, if one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame. So if you've been with someone that asks a question, you give an answer, but what that really does is spark them off on a conversation about themselves or something in their life that is, it's like they're trying to relate. Like, someone asks you a question, you give them an answer, and you're not quite done yet. You're trying to engage with them on that topic they asked about, but because you mentioned something about baseball,
Right.
they go off on a tangent about baseball or something about back when they played baseball in high school. And then next thing you know, you're 7 minutes later listening to their story when they were the one that asked you the question.
Oh, man, that classic. Yeah. Well, I think the heart of your question is, and I think the answer is both. In other words, is this a skill that can be learned? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll give you one secret ingredient to learning the skill here in a second. Or is it a heart posture? Is it deeper than skill? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. It's both. So for example, the trick to learning the skill version, is multivarious. There's probably 5 things you could do, but one of the big ones is have somebody in your life who can observe you in a social setting or even a business setting, and then chase that person for feedback after.
Right.
Often, the easiest version of this is your spouse. For most men, if April and I are at a dinner party, I say dinner party. I don't even know what those things are, but like, it sounds like we're like socialites with, cigarettes and long sticks going, oh, no, darling, please take me to the dinner party. I don't know why I call it a dinner party. If we're at a social gathering, especially one where I don't know everybody super well. It's a little different, I guess, if like you and Bo, you're 10 or 15 or 20 and all the basics are under the bridge. Like y'all know where each other grew up, whether each other likes steak or golf. There's the basic conversation bits that you don't need to recover with someone like Bo. But especially when I was starting Manhood Journey, the first 3 to 5 years of doing what I'm doing now, I was really amped about it. I was excited. I had ideas in my head. I had a lot of thoughts of what I wanted to do, ways I wanted God open this door and that door. And God was doing us a lot of favors. We had some early financial wins. We had some early relational wins. So when I would get around my family, brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law, I would want to talk about those things. Man, guess what happened this week? Or, a publisher picked up my book or whatever, right? Like I had news that I was excited to share. And every now and then we'd leave those parties and April would be like, all right, look, I'm excited about Manhood Journey too. And I love what's happening. But golly, man, come on, take a breath, take a breath. And it didn't hurt. It didn't help necessarily, right? That I'm an extrovert. So I don't mind talking. Although I've become a better listener in the last 10 years than I was the 10, 20 years prior. So I think an awareness, the step one is an awareness, like for real in a conversation. How much time do you spend talking or preparing to talk versus how much time you spend listening or preparing to respond to what they said?
Yeah.
And thinking about what they said. I can think of a guy who leads a podcast and, sadly you can tell he walks into the show with a list of questions that kind of like, come hell or high water, he's going to get through his list of questions. And every now and then he'll have a guest on who says something dramatic or like earth shattering. Well, the time I flew over the moon or when my wife died or the time I got cured of cancer or whatever, something amazing. He doesn't even follow up on it.
Right.
Like on the show.
Right.
He's like, okay. So then when you started your other business, and I'm like, bro, did you hear what they just said? So for me, the trick is learning to ask questions and then doing a little bit of pre-prep if you're walking into a social or communal setting. And what I mean by that is you park your car, you get out, you and your wife and your kids are loading into the family Thanksgiving dinner or the Christmas dinner, a 7-second prayer that says something like, God, I don't know what I'm walking into, but help me be a blessing. Or somebody here needs to be encouraged. Help me to encourage. Or somebody here just needs to be heard. Who's that? And how can I listen? Something that just triggers your mind on the way in to be a receiver, as opposed to being like a speaker. You know, you're receiving the input, not blaring the input. That goes a long way to helping set your tactics or your skills and your heart in the right direction.
Yeah. So us dads, whether we're married and have a great partner coach like you and I both do, I think you're right, man. Finding somebody in your life who you really want to hear and seek honest feedback from, because it's not always apparent to us, you know, the things that other people notice. You got to be pretty self-aware. You got to really be reflective and have that perspective, and other people can help you gain that.
Yeah.
And you got to really want to, you know, I think at the heart of the matter, part of it too is you got to really want to be interested and engaged. So as a dad, you know, we talk a lot about our words matter, you know, and the way that we speak, our body language, our tone, and the actual words as the dad carry weight with our kids. And it may not even seem like it. Maybe you've got a teenager who clearly is trying really hard to ignore you, you know, like, right. But they're listening and they're watching. And so how do you do that? You know, how do we create the environment in our home and within our family, where we as the dads can be the Blake, can be the best question asker, listener. And I think there's a few things, I'll just throw this out, is create a safe space. Like have transparency, honesty, real reflection, be safe. You know, not condemning, not a place where you are, if you share something openly that maybe you're afraid to share, if that is critiqued and that's the norm, that's not a safe space. People will shut down. B would be patient. I had a mentor in a men's group once. His name was Kim. This was back in Kennesaw when we were back at Sanctuary Church. And Kim, I had to get used to it. In fact, Kim was so patient in a conversation. He would ask a question, and if you gave a short answer, he would just kind of sit and be like,
Wow.
and
A little bit of dead air.
Which you want to fill. And so I'd dig a little deeper and come up with more of the answer to that. And he's just like, oh, yeah. Giving me nothing.
Right.
You know? And so he was patient in that conversation. And he was visibly listening. And then C would be ask questions, ask routinely and during routine. So when you're out getting the mower to, you know, start getting ready to cut the grass or something, you and your son are out there, you know, getting ready, pulling the equipment out. That's when you can ask questions that might be a deep question, like, hey, how are you and your girlfriend going? Not, hey, come in here and have a seat and let's you take a chair and I'll take a chair because I've got some questions for you. You know, that can put up sometimes you may need to have that kind of conversation. But often when you're in doing the routine things, riding down the road, taking a walk, doing something together, maybe cooking or preparing to cook, cleaning up, you know, those are times where people's guard can be down and you're just doing your thing. But the first part of that is asking questions routinely. And that is that it's not like a big deal. You're just lobbing questions out routinely, you know, and so it's not a unique thing. It's not some like, oh, wow, dad's asking questions that's odd. That I'm not used to
Right.
that. You know what I'm saying? So those three things would be just some practical app
Yeah.
thoughts that I was going over. Uh, Create a safe space, be patient, listen well, don't hurry the conversation. And so what that can mean too is be mindful of when you are beginning to have a conversation. You can avoid times where you're in a hurry and you're up against a timeline that's
Yes.
a deadline that's it's 9:48 and you've got a phone call at 10 that you just can't miss. Well,
Yeah.
maybe the conversation where you really need to dig in is going to have to wait.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to happen right then if you know what you're doing is running a risk of, like, I'm going to have to cut this off,
Yes.
and
Wow.
then the person feels like, well, God, I was just starting to share. And then like I said, the last thing is ask routinely during routine.
I live a life where it's kind of bound by schedule, on purpose. I think that's healthy. I think I get a lot done. Having said that, there are times when, man, what you just said is really important, where a conversation needs to breathe or a conversation needs to go longer.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm constrained, and I've gotten better. I need to grow in this, but I've gotten better. Number one, to your point, if you got 3 minutes before you got to get to your next Zoom call, that's not the time to say, how are you and the kids doing?
Right.
Because it actually conveys a level of insincerity, because what you're saying is,
well
you and I
said.
both know I got to be gone in 2 minutes. So your answer can't go very long, pal. Right. And so we know that. So okay. So for example, I might say, hey, Lawson, I really want to know more about how Audrey and the girls are doing. I know we're pressed for time. Let me save that one for when we reconnect.
There you go.
Right. And then you're like, I acknowledged, I let us run out of time. I'm sorry, I got us right up against the end of our time together. I think that's very, very important, especially for the guys listening who are driven by schedule and they have meetings on their calendar. Don't ask a question that's going to evoke a deeply emotional or self-revealing answer when you've got a very, very tight schedule to bounce to the very next thing.
Or don't just ask it as a yes, no. You guys doing good?
You guys are okay, right? Because I ain't got time for the answer no. I do have time for the answer yes.
That's right. There's open-ended questions that allow the conversation to breathe, and then there's yes, no, finite questions where, and there's nothing wrong with those questions, but if you're really wanting to get into something, it's not, hey, I know your wife was in the hospital last week. She good?
Right. Right. I think there's a couple things that what I would like to point out, a couple scriptures. Number one, if you want to get better in this area, go read the book of Proverbs. Just read it over and over again. It's probably the most effective stretch of scripture at helping you see both things. And what I mean by that is both the skills and tactics of an inquisitive person, or one who does ask good questions, but also the heart of the matter. So for example, Proverbs 18:15, you cited 18:13 earlier. 18:15 goes on to say, an intelligent heart, and it may translate a little different based on your version, an intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. Notice the two body parts it references, your heart and your ears.
Ooh, yeah, right on.
And it says knowledge 2 times, and it says intelligent. So you go, wait a minute. Sometimes you can learn a lot about what a scripture is saying by just kind of flipping it around and looking at it backward, right? So the unintelligent heart rejects knowledge. It's pretty obvious how to get to the inverse of that verse, right? And the ear of the wise doesn't listen to knowledge, or the ear of the unwise doesn't listen to knowledge. So it'd be easy to look at Proverbs 18:15 or Proverbs 25:2. It's the glory of God to conceal things. There are mysteries hidden by God since the beginning of time, many of which he's revealed, not all, but the glory of kings is to search things out. And so there's this curiosity and this idea of seeking wisdom from other people. And I'll just say, whether this is good or bad, whether this is good or bad. I'll let our listeners kind of determine how they fall on this sort of continuum. When I'm around people who, after 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, you just know all they care about is disclosing what's in their head. And then when you talk, they don't listen. Like the guy I mentioned, who pivoted right after he asked me a question. I make a lot of judgments about their character. I probably shouldn't. Like, I should probably have a little more grace. My friend Trey, who's on our board at Manhood Journey, he and I once led a discipleship group for about a year. And the guys jokingly came to call us Old Testament Kent and New Testament Trey. I was the law, and Trey was grace. And there was more truth to that than I would care to have admitted. Because I can be pretty, driven and insistent. However, all that aside, Kent's own, character flaws aside, if all you care about is what you have to say, that is a character problem. Like, seriously, it is. Now, maybe you got distracted, or maybe your watch buzzed or something like that. That's the other reason I have an Apple Watch I never wear. And one of the reasons I hardly ever wear it is because my mind is already easily distracted. The last thing I need is my arm telling me who texted me 47 times since we sit down for lunch. Like,
right.
So
you're always chasing squirrels. So the last thing you need to do is fill the room with squirrels.
Yeah, exactly. Tie a squirrel to my wrist. That's a great idea. Proverbs 1:5 says, let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance, right? Or Solomon, who wrote book Proverbs, also wrote Ecclesiastes, says in 7:25 Ecclesiastes, I applied my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom in the scheme of things. So here's the guy who's credited as being, God asked him, what do you want, man? I'll give you anything you want. And Solomon said, wisdom. How about that? And God's like, bam, I'll give you wisdom and riches because you didn't ask for riches. Way to go. And so this guy who chased wisdom, he says he applied his heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom in the scheme of things. So one thing we can do in this area is just know the heart of the wise is a seeking heart. It's a curious heart. It's a learning heart. It's a posture of, you probably know something. The other day I heard Max Lucado interviewed on a podcast. Fascinating to me listening to Max talk. And I don't know Max personally, but I've read a bunch of his books and I have a great admiration for Max. I've heard him interviewed 5 times. I think every single time I've heard him interviewed, he will give a 1 or 2 minute answer to a question at some point, and he'll ask the interviewer what he or she thinks about that topic.
Ooh, cool.
And what's fascinating to me is, for example, in the I won't say where he was because it's just easier for not to, but he was on a show, and the show, the interviewer writes books, and so does Max. Well, everybody knows Max Lucado sold probably 200 million books by now. Like, and that's a real number. It's in that range. It's 150 to 200 million books. Best-selling Christian author by, like, I don't know who's in second place. Maybe like a Beth Moore or somebody like that. But Max has sold a bunch of books. So if you get on the topic, if you got 2 authors, it's like me talking to, like, Andy Pettit about baseball. Like I couldn't even make the high school team, man. And Andy Pettit won 5 World Series. If the topic were baseball, and I said, Andy, what's the most important thing you got to know about a hitter? And then Andy goes, blah, 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 hitter, blah, blah, blah. Kent, what do you think? What was it when you used to play? Like, what? Like, literally, you got a guy going to the Hall of Fame at the thing he's being asked about who wants to dish the ball out and hear somebody else talk. I think that reveals a heart posture.
Me too. Yep.
That's just the way he thinks. He thinks all the people around him have something valuable to share.
Yeah. That's a key. That's a key point right there, dude. Yep. It's are you curious? Like you started talking about it first,
right.
It's or if you're always the one delivering all the information, does that mean you're curious or self-centered? I don't know. I don't think it necessarily reveals some character flaw. I don't want to get that deep, but it certainly makes people not feel like you're interested in them or you're curious about their life. Or if you ask one question and then that creates for you a tangent that you go taking off on,
Yeah,
about your own life.
that's right.
But and there's so much to talk about with this topic, man, and especially when we're getting into our kids and our families.
Yeah.
For
Let me share, Lawson. Let me share before we get to the end, because I know we're going to.
No, I wasn't going there.
Go ahead then. I thought you might be landing the plane, and there's something I wanted to make sure we got to before we
right.
Before we closed out.
And I think we could keep this going. By the way, for sure. There's so much richness and in what God teaches us in Proverbs, and that's great from an Old Testament as well. Proverbs is obviously the richest of wisdom in the world, but Jesus was a question asker. Jesus was a listener. Everywhere he went, he could have doled out the answers. He could have told stories, without even trying to ask, is someone interested in something that, he was going to have to say, but he made people think. He caused them to reflect. He asked, "Who do you say that I am?" He asked Peter, "Why did you doubt?" He asked, "Why do you love me?" Or "Do you love me?" He asked him 3 times, pressed in harder each time, And so there are just, the Bible is just chock full of lessons on why, and I think how. We ask our kids questions about their behavior.
Yeah.
My dad was great at that. He was he was a social worker. So he was, a therapist. He asked questions all the time of his clients. And I think that was just his demeanor. He was just, his starting point was always asking about other people. And so he'd, rather than get on to me sometimes, like, why did you hit your sister? And and I'd give some lame answer. He's like, "No, but why? Like, what's
That's great.
Questions about emotions. That's where you've got to have that safe space. You got to be patient. You got to ask routinely. It can't be this unique one-off thing where you ask your daughter or your son how they're feeling about something. That's where you got to sit and continue to ask and pull at that string. The more you pull at those strings, the more you're going to get. So, where were you going?
Well, what I wanted to make sure, which I'm glad you talked about how Jesus asked questions, because he, depending on your kind of theological bent, one could argue most of the questions, for sure, if not all, he already knew the answer to.
Right.
And there were times in Scripture where he read people's thoughts, and they were like, "Wow, he knew what I was thinking." Or he could state something that would happen in the future with extreme clarity. And so, again, depending on how much of the path you think God revealed to Jesus as he grew in wisdom and stature, but clearly, here's the guy who had all the answers and should have been the one of which we were asking all the questions. He would ask questions routinely, and I think it wasn't for him to be informed most of the time.
Right.
It was so that the person would reveal something. And not like a trick. He wasn't playing like parlor games, but it was for him to say, like he would say to people, "Do you want to be healed?" And to the casual observer, you're like, "Dude, he's been laying by this pool for years.
Right.
Why do you got to ask the dude, does he want to be healed? Obviously he wants to be healed." But I think he wanted it to be like on record in their mouth, in their heart. He wanted them to reveal what they wanted. I remember a couple guys who've coached me a lot. A guy like Frank, guy like Greg, guy like Matt, Glenn, guys I can think of. And they would ask me really good questions. And one of the most provocative and helpful questions these guys would ever ask me is, "What do you want? Just what do you want?" I would call and be griping about this thing or my kids or this finance problem or this work problem. And they would just listen. And then they would go, "What do you want?" And me me having to wrestle with,
Right.
well, what do I want? Like, do I want a corner office? Do I want a 20% pay raise? Do I want somebody just to like get off my back and give me a break? You know, like what do I want? And for me, I asked a guy recently, he was calling to ask about some ideas around how he could be a more effective husband. And I just said, hey man, can you paint a picture for me? Let's go a year down the road. You go a year down the road. Next summer, we're talking. And your marriage is in a much better place. Your marriage is in a much better place. What would that look like? Describe for me the marriage you want to have a year from now. And just the process of him having to put that puzzle together with his own words, out of his own heart, out of his own mind, starts to aim him in that direction. Right? It's like something that if you help me build something, we're both going to caretake it in a unique way than if I just built it and handed it to you. As opposed to saying, well, here's what you want in your marriage a year from now. Let me tell you. No, you tell me. What do you want? Well, I want there to be less fighting. Awesome. What do y'all tend to fight about? Right? You start chasing the thread.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to list a few things. We almost came up with this really cool acrostic.
I like it. Yeah, I think it is.
Asking questions helped you to be, but the closest we got was charity with an I on the end. So it doesn't really spell anything and it doesn't really finish the sentence. So, maybe we should have given that a little more thought. But anyway, here are some things that I think happen when you become known as, or you become the guy who is doing it like Blake, like my friend Blake, when you're the one asking questions. Here's what happens to you. And I think asking questions doesn't just reveal information. It doesn't just make you friends and influence people, although why not? It doesn't just open doors, but here's some things that happen. Number one, it keeps you humble. It keeps you humble. When you're the one asking questions, like I said of Max Lucado earlier, he doesn't strike me as the cocky, kind of arrogant, look, man, of all the people living, I've sold the most books of any of you people. So if you want to sit down and talk about book writing, just sit down and let me talk to you for an hour and you take notes. He doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. He strikes me as humble because he asks questions. Whether he is or isn't, I don't know his heart, but my sense is he probably is. Second, it keeps you curious. It reveals things you didn't know. Guess what? I don't care how much you know about anything. There is a lot more you don't know than you do know. I don't care who you are, right? The most successful, amazing, skilled person in the world. Like, again, back to How to Win Friends. Dale Carnegie used to say, hey, if I became homeless, I'd need a homeless guy to show me how to be homeless. Because I don't know how to be homeless.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, like being curious. It actually makes you more influential.
Yeah.
You have more influence asking smart questions than you do making a lot of brilliant statements.
Yeah.
And part of it is because it's like Proverbs 22:6, right? Train up a child in the way he should go. You're learning where he or she wants to go, right? If you want to become a nuclear scientist, I might help you Google it, but I'm not going to be very helpful. But if you want to launch a nonprofit and you want to build a website or write a book, hey, now I can be more influential because I know where you want to go. And it happens to be somewhere I've either been or am going, or I know people who've been there. Now I can be more helpful to you. It makes you more aware. Makes you more aware of your surroundings. It makes you more relatable. I heard a guy say one time, he who can relate to the most people wins. And sometimes we get so hooked on our Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or our personality disc profile that the only people we can influence are the people just like us, because that's the only skill we master. All we got is a curveball. We don't have any other pitches. And in the end, if you want to have influence, you're probably going to have kids who are different than you. And if you consistently force them to relate to you the way you want to be related to, you'll find a very narrow box of relatability with your children. And then lastly, you mentioned it early. It's the one I added while we were talking. You're going to be more trusted. People will trust you with more information, with more of their secret desires, their their challenges, their struggles, their frustrations, opportunities. Things will come your way because people can trust you, because you've demonstrated that you are an effective listener. When you are curious and when you listen to other people. And so, Dad, this is the thing I want to really encourage dads to consider. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Lawson. I want to give you kind of final word today. The one thing I want to double back to is you said, is this a skill or is this a heart posture? And we know the answer is some blend of both, obviously. But don't kid yourself. You can learn these skills. You can become more trustworthy, more humble, more curious, more relatable. It's like any other muscle. If you work that muscle out, you're going to build that muscle. You're going to strengthen that muscle. At the same time, it is a heart posture. It is a heart posture. Do you walk into scenarios trying to be noticed and known? And I've done this for years, man. I am both highly skilled at working my way out of this and being better at it than I used to be. I'm also one of the greatest offenders, earlier in my life. And even now, it's not like I'm over it. I'm just slightly more aware of it than I used to be. And April has, carte blanche to catch me when I'm veering off into the Kent self-interest ditch. But in that regard, it's a heart posture. Do you walk into situations looking to help people, looking to learn, looking to grow, or do you walk in looking to, spout your LinkedIn profile to everybody who will listen?
Yeah.
And I just hope you choose the path of curiosity and the path of interest and wisdom and seeking knowledge, because it'll unlock a lot of doors for you as a husband and a dad.
Yeah, we're all guilty of thinking about ourselves an awful lot. But as a dad, it's partly our responsibility to help guide our children, and the way to do that is to have them reflect and think and become thinkers and creators of their own thoughts. And the way that we can do that is press them with questions. So, if today has been a challenge for you or not, maybe you're great at it. We all need to continue to hone this skill, and there's times in our lives where we're better at it than other times. A lot of things go into how good are we at asking questions and then receiving that information with a real heart to listen. If you are challenged to do that better now after today, look up James 1 verse 19, write it down, and maybe read it multiple times throughout the day. If this is something that you're going to focus on, James 1:19 says, "Know this, my beloved brothers." So this is a message for all of us. "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Quick to hear and slow to speak. Take your sweet time with the speaking. Ask questions, be quick to hear, and slow to speak. Maybe while you're listening, you are hearing what they're saying in order to form your next question about them, about that topic. Try to avoid relating to that by offering something that is similar in nature that you struggle with. Maybe keep that thought, but ask again, ask them again for more, and be that guy that when your kids start to speak, they can feel how intently you are, how curious you are, how much you want to hear what's going on in their life, and only that. And so, and I think, Dad, let's go be fathers on purpose with purposeful question asking and purposeful listening. And I think you'll find more and more how often your kids will trust you. They'll come to you. They'll open up to you. They'll want to be transparent with you. They'll be honest with you and themselves. And that's just great for them and great for us as dads.
See you next week, dads.